Hey everyone, my name is Candis Dyer, and this is Canna Corner. We are broadcasted live every Monday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we are also broadcasted on KM 420 radio at Sundays at 2 and WJAE 420 radio on Wednesdays at 2. I have an amazing show lined up for us today. Sorry about the delay in the show. We had some storms, but we're getting through it. We're going to get through this. And I know that we have a lot of police issues that we deal with how they do things that aren't right, kind of shady and stuff like that. And today I have Justin Machacek with me, and he is going to tell us a little bit about that. But first, I want him to introduce himself and let y'all know a little bit about who he is.
Hi, I'm Justin Machacek. I am a cannabis activist and a Republican activist. I've been fighting for criminal justice reform and cannabis legalization since about 2012 in the Republican Party. I helped to get the medical marijuana plank into the platform for the Republican Party of Texas back in 2014. And I've been active ever since, trying to educate people, trying to let people know, that it's not the devil's lettuce, and kind of try to overcome some of the propaganda that's been out there for the last, 100 years, I guess. So.
Exactly. They spent a lot of money in Dare telling us how bad this plant is. And then to find out that we're lied to. And I will give you major props for helping with the Republican side of things, because my dad, if you don't know, he is a Pentecostal preacher. And so I totally know about how they can just not like cannabis. So major props to you for that.
One thing you may not know about me is I was in Christian ministry for 20 years.
Wow.
I worked at Daystar Television Network, and we were an evangelistic network. And so charismatic, Pentecostal, that whole vibe. And so bringing attention to this to the church and letting the church know, how this is not anti-biblical. God said he gave us every green herb and seed-bearing plant for our food. And that's one of my arguments, is that cannabis is a food, and it's something that we should be using for nutritional value, and the benefits of THCA, the benefits of CBDA, and all the rest of the cannabinoids that are there. I mean, there's like 160 some odd cannabinoids that we know of right now. Our body has an endocannabinoid system that's literally designed to intake these molecules that only are provided by the cannabis plant. So
exactly.
Needs to know, and they've been.
No, they do need to know. They need to have people like you who can go in there and are on the same page and be like, no, look at this. Because, okay, it's okay for me to go to church and lead worship and be on 3 milligrams Xanax a day because my doctor prescribed it. But it wasn't okay for me to smoke a plant, and it alters your mind, but so did the Xanax. So it never really made sense to me why they were so closed-minded about it, other than the propaganda. It could help so many people.
Right. Well, and cannabis is different for everybody, right? It affects everybody a little bit differently, just like Xanax, or just like Ritalin, or just like some of these other things. If you've got ADHD and you're taking Ritalin, it may have one effect on you. But if you don't have ADHD, then you take Ritalin, it's going to be, like taking meth almost. So
exactly. No, you're absolutely correct.
Everybody needs to be careful with it. I don't think that everybody should use it for the same. And I think, so yeah.
Heck yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Everybody, it affects everybody different for sure. And I know that it saved my life, man. I'd be stuck in that pharmaceutical loop if it wasn't for cannabis still today, and not getting anywhere. It wasn't helping me. It seemed like it was just making everything worse. I know you're here to talk about your arrest and stuff. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about before that, prior to, and the business that you had started up, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, I've been a cannabis promoter, advocate, believer since I was in the 8th grade. I wrote my first pro cannabis paper in a middle school class. It was an English class, and and I did my own research, and I found out that it wasn't everything that they had told us that it was, and learn more and know. I'm 42 now. I've been a believer, for the last, I guess, almost 30 years. And although I haven't actively used it, all kind of saved my life because I was drinking myself to death. And I got really stressed out on my job and everything else in 2010, 2011. And I started drinking to kind of, self-medicate or whatever. I hate pharmaceutical drugs. I don't believe in pharmaceutical drugs at all. And so I started drinking, which was a terrible idea. And it started out with just a little wine here and there. And, after about 5 years, I was, drinking myself drunk, passed out every night. And I ended up in the hospital with a staph infection because my immune system was so bad. And, I tried to quit drinking and I couldn't quit drinking, and it just became awful. So, I took the leap and I started using cannabis again to try to get over it. And, it took a little bit of time, but eventually, after, I don't know, a few months or whatever, I was able to completely eliminate the alcohol and stop drinking altogether. So,
That's
um,
awesome.
I, I struggle with ADHD. I have bouts of depression, and I have high anxiety. So for me, the cannabis was a way to just kind of slow my brain down just a little bit to be able to function normally.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was getting at with everybody's a little different. For me, it doesn't really affect me a lot like other
Right.
people. Like, I mean, I use it, and it's like I'm a normal individual.
Mellows you out. Just
Yeah,
slows your
yeah,
brain down
yeah,
so you
just
can
enough to
think.
yeah, just enough to really focus and to be able to stay on track, because otherwise I'm bouncing all over the place.
Right. And that's what I tell people all the time. It's like once you start taking it like a medication,
Mhm.
you don't really get high anymore. It takes a
Right,
tremendous amount to get me high anymore. And
right,
it's just like a dose to, like you said, keep you mellow, and
yeah,
and it doesn't affect you the way it does when you take that first
yep.
hit and you're giggly and
Right. Well, and that's really the important thing about it. It's about dosing. It's about making sure you're taking an appropriate dose. It's about knowing what you're doing. I mean, I ended up in 2019. I started in 2000. I think it was 2018. Oklahoma passed SB 788, which allowed for medical marijuana in Oklahoma, and the licensing was very favorable to small business and to people who could, didn't necessarily have a lot of funding, but but wanted to be in the cannabis industry.
right.
So I had been doing research because I wanted to be in the cannabis business, and so I opened up a shop in Oklahoma. We got licensed. I worked with the city of Marietta for 8 months to get a building rezoned. Had a great relationship with the mayor, had a great relationship with the chief of police, and
Awesome.
so we were working with them to do everything legal, because I do believe that the legal market is, the black market was one of our problems, is that a lot of people were continuing in the black market, and they were bringing prices so far down and compressing prices that legal producers couldn't compete.
Right.
So after, in 2019, we opened up shop. It was like December, January 2020. And we had a cultivation and a processing license. And I had a good sized shop up there that we were operating out of. And we started selling medical cannabis to, and it was really surreal in a lot of ways, because it's like it had been illegal for so long. You're kind of
Right.
looking at your shoulder all the time. You're
Oh
always worried
yes.
about it. And to be able to drive to work and walk in and just have cannabis naturally there to just be able to use it, to research it, to do what you need to do with it without the fear of, law enforcement
Right.
it was really kind of a dream come true. I think surreal is the only word for it, but it was awesome. And so that then after about that was January we opened up, December, January we opened up, and about by March or April is when COVID started to kind of really kick in. And what was really crazy is that in Oklahoma, because we were doing medical cannabis, we were considered an essential industry.
Yes.
And so they didn't shut us down. They were like, you guys need to keep operating because people need their medicine. One of the really cool things about Oklahoma was that they really adopted cannabis very quickly. Like the whole the whole community up there, the whole society up there, they very quickly said, this is normal,
Right.
and normalize it very quickly. So it was really two different worlds. I would drive to work up there and I'd be in Oklahoma and there's dispensaries everywhere and people are talking about it and people are using it. And
Right.
the way the laws were is that you can use cannabis anywhere that you can smoke tobacco. So pretty
Right.
much anywhere you were at, you could use it. So it became very common very quickly. And Oklahoma also became one of the biggest states for medical users, and they had one of the highest percentages of medical users. So it was it adapted very quickly from no to
Right.
this is a thriving industry. So COVID hit, and then our labor, there was a labor shortage. Everybody kind of went on the stimuluses, and we were having a hard time finding people, and so we started. I had to kind of figure out how to make things happen,
Right.
and I was still commuting back and forth. And I ended up getting pulled over on the way home one day and encountered a really sort of unfriendly police officer, and
Right.
so it was, I made some mistakes in my encounter with the police officer, which I think, I'd like to share with people so that they
Right.
know. Like, I've always been one of those that's just sort of, kind of tells the police officer what, just be honest, and then,
Right.
well,
Yeah, you think they're there to help you, and they're not. They're trying to trip you up in every question they ask.
so the police officer tried to use what's called plain smell doctrine. Well, first he tried to use what's called plain sight doctrine, and then he tried to use what's called plain smell doctrine. And I didn't even realize it at the time because it sort of happened so quickly. But
Right.
well,
why did he pull you over to begin with? Like,
well, he pulled me over because he said I was texting and driving. I was, and then later on in the stop, he said that I was going 81 or 82 miles over in a 75. So it would have been like 7 miles an hour over the
right.
speed. Which, if you've ever driven up and down 35, you know that 80 is pretty much like the standard
Right.
that people
Right.
drive. So I was really going with the flow of traffic. I wasn't doing a whole lot there. Of course, my passenger was Black, and so there's that whole side of it too.
Right.
And but he pulled me over. He said I was texting and driving. He asked me where I was going. I told him I was going home. He said, I said I was going home from work, and then he said, well, I see your shirt and your hat.
Right.
You were wearing lab shirts and hats. And he said, where do you work at? And I said, we work at a cannabis facility in Oklahoma. And he said, he asked me another question, and he said, well, I see some cannabis right there on your console. And I was like, what? And I looked down, and there was a small piece of a leaf from a flower that I had picked on the side of the road that I had in a water bottle. I picked the flower to bring home to my wife. And I said, oh, no, sir, it was this flower. And I showed it to him. It was literally in a water bottle in the, in the cup holder. And so then he's like, well, I smell it too. And I'm like, well, so the guy is just sitting here fishing. And this is what they do is they try to come up with every way to say, oh, well, I'm going to create an excuse to abridge your Fourth Amendment rights and search your car.
Right.
So yeah, those are both mistakes that I made, just not knowing, because you don't have encounters with police every day. So my recommendation to anyone is like, just don't answer their questions. Say, are you are you going to ticket me? He pulls
Yeah.
you over. He says this, the only thing you need to say is,
Write me a ticket, let me go.
you're going to ticket me, because what I didn't know at the time is as soon as you begin to engage with them, they're what's called deferring from the probable cause of the stop.
Right.
So it's better to just say, well, are you going to ticket me, and then move on.
Right.
But I didn't, and so he sort of elevated his tone and got kind of aggressive, and he was like, well, he said, well, I smell marijuana. And I said, well, you may smell marijuana. I just told you I work in a cannabis
Right.
facility. There's no possible way that we can't smell like marijuana.
Right.
That's what we do every day. And if it's fresh and it's smelly and
Right.
it gets everything.
Yes, it does.
Plus we used my car for transport and all of those sort of things too. So it permeated the
Right.
car. And this is the sad part about Texas right now, because now we have a legal hemp industry, and anyone now who's working in the hemp industry is now has to be worried about police harassment, because all they have to do is say, oh, well, I smell marijuana.
I smell weed.
And
I
it's
can
like,
search your vehicle.
yeah. So now, so the Fourth Amendment really, they're trampling all over our Fourth Amendment rights, and they're really taking advantage of that fact. Not that they haven't for decades, but it's just a little weirder now because, we have legal industries, and so that was one of the things I wanted to challenge, was the plain smell doctrine. But
Right. Well, I mean, that in alone is just totally crazy, because number one, there are a lot of corrupt cops out there that do say I smell something when they don't, just so that they can search a vehicle, just so that they can have that way. And we need to take that out of there. If there's no proof, like your nose shouldn't be good enough proof to search my vehicle. And then you got, like you said, the legal market now. So you're basically, anybody who deals with cannabis has to write all their rights away now, because they can be searched and seized at any time. They can come into their businesses and check that out. They can, whatever they want, their houses,
right,
anything they want.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing about it, is I really, through this whole process, I really thought the Constitution would protect me. And over again, I was shown that they just trample on our constitutional rights.
Yes.
And the way the judicial system is built, it's really difficult to challenge that, and it's almost impossible to get over it. So
exactly.
So what happened was, he searched my car and he found some cannabis that was in there, and really it was, I had less than the personal use amount in Oklahoma. So in Oklahoma at the time, you were allowed to possess up to 3 ounces of concentrates. You were allowed to possess like a quarter pound of flour.
Right.
And so I had some personal use stuff in there, and they he searched my car. He found that, and he found 2 pistols, because we carry our pistols to be able to protect ourselves up there. There's been several shootings where someone tried to rob somebody and they defended themselves, and there were several robberies and break-in. We got broken into, and had some things stolen early on.
Well, this is what people don't understand. Y'all aren't allowed to put y'all's money in banks.
Right.
Like, you're not allowed to use a credit card machine. So none of the debit, all that, because it's because federally it's still illegal. So you are asked to walk around with large amounts of cash on you and not carry a gun to protect yourself. Like, you're basically calling all people to come rob me. It's not safe.
Yeah, literally you are a target at that point. Yeah, I mean, there were many times where we had, $15, $20, $30,000 in cash. We had, 50, 60, 70 pounds of marijuana. We had, all these different things. And so a lot of people get into the industry and they're like, oh, well, we're going to have armed security and we're going to have this, and we're going to have that. And it's like, yeah, that's great. And you can have that idea in your head, but the reality is you have to be able to afford all that.
Yeah.
And so the most small businesses, they protect themselves and they carry on their own. And Oklahoma actually wrote legislation to protect gun owners, so that wouldn't happen to them. Of course, Texas is Texas, and we're way behind the ball here. And so they're still using these antiquated laws to, sort of trample on the rights of people and everything else. So the officer searched my car, and he found some cannabis, and he found my guns, and I had about I didn't have a lot of cash. To me anyway, it was like $6,500 cash on me,
Right.
business money, which was not a lot at the time.
Right.
So he arrested me and my passenger, and we got charged with possession with intent to distribute. Well, I hired an attorney, and we filed a lawsuit against the Texas DPS
Right.
to be able to get our stuff back. And that's how you have to go through the civil asset process. Is
Right.
if they take all your stuff, it's civil asset forfeiture.
Yep.
And then in order for you to get it back, you have to sue the government to say, no, those were legal things. And then you have to prove that they were legal.
Yep.
So we sued the government, and we were going to show them that this was all legal material and blah, blah, blah. And the Texas DA, this is at a state level, the Texas DA comes back and says, look, I'm talking to my attorney. My attorney and the DA are going back and forth. And my attorney comes back to me and he says, look, we can't get this in writing because they're not supposed to do this. But they said, if you drop your civil suit, then they'll drop your criminal suit.
Right.
So I was like, okay.
Can't get this in writing because they're doing something illegal. They are telling you to give them $6,500 in weed, and they will drop their charges against you. That's extortion.
Right. Yeah. So I said, okay, that gets us out.
Of course, anybody would.
So they wanted my guns and my cash, and I let them have it. And then, as they said, they dropped my criminal case. I thought, well, this is great. We're done.
Right.
So it was scary. It was a lot of things. I'm like, man, this is affecting everything. I was very worried about it, but obviously I made a stupid decision in having it with me in the car, but it is what it is. And it was kind of like a big exhale, like, thank God this is over, it's done. And so we continue operations, we're going along, everything's pretty normal. We're starting to feel the pressure of, the markets just being, the medical market being slow, and the black market starting to create crisis coming down. And then in May of the following year, so almost a full year later, the ATF comes to Marietta, Oklahoma, and they arrest me on a warrant for an indictment. And so now this is the federal government stepping in and saying, well, it's really double jeopardy is what it is, because they're putting you, they're basically saying, here's a crime that you went for, they dropped the case, everything was dismissed, and now we're going to bring it back again at a federal level, and we're going to indict you at this level. So
it was to get you to drop your case against the state.
Right. And well, that was the state.
But they work together.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen, I just talked about an article. I know this is a little off subject, but it goes with it. In California, where it's legal, the sheriff's department and the federal department, they were going and waiting until the cash trucks, armored trucks, would come and get the cash from the cannabis businesses and move them from point A to point B, wherever they store it. Right. Well, the sheriffs were in cahoots with the FBI, and they would say they're going to be coming from this place this time, and they stopped them and got over $1 million in cash. Right. So then I look into it and I'm like, well, where's this money going? Right. The sheriff's department gets to keep 80% of that to do as they see fit. I guarantee you the federal government gets the rest. And they're in cahoots. They're working together on this to get the big fishes, the dispensary owners, the people who are selling it.
Well, and so I'll share with you something that goes even beyond that. So the ATF, I come to find out, so I got arrested in Marietta. I got booked in Sherman in the Eastern District in the federal court. And I went to court, I got bonded out. I didn't have an attorney, secured, so I had to fight. I literally had to fight to get public counsel at my initial bond hearing. The public counsel came over and threw a bunch of conditions in my face. They have this thing called conditional bail, and so they had like 14 or it was like 10, maybe 10 conditions I think that were on me. They said that I couldn't operate my businesses in Oklahoma. They said that I couldn't travel to Oklahoma. They said that I had to submit to random drug testing continually. Basically, if you read the conditions, it was federal probation.
Right.
So I actually have fewer restrictions right now on supervised release than I had on pretrial release.
Right.
So I was trying to make the argument, I finally did secure an attorney, and I tried to make the argument that it's really punishment without trial.
Right.
And so this conditional bond thing, you're putting people on probation without a trial.
Yeah, you never even got them convicted yet. Yeah, and you're punishing them.
Yeah, that's Fifth Amendment. That's you have a right to due process, and they don't do that. They say,
It's not. It's not innocent until proven guilty anymore. It's innocent and or guilty until we prove our own selves innocent.
Right, and it's
if you don't have the money to fight it, you're screwed.
Yeah, and I didn't have the money. Like I said, we were feeling the pressure of the market.
Right.
We had already invested pretty much all our life savings. I was trying to find other investors to be able to help, fill the gaps. And so we were already struggling. And then, I had to find an attorney, and I had to do all this. So I did secure an attorney, but one of the things that my attorney told me, talking about the arms, the ATF actually gives grant money to the prosecutors for them to, sort of manipulate grand juries and get them to take up cases so that they can get grant money for their offices.
Right.
That way they can buy cars, or they can do whatever they need, to make their lives better. And so it's really kind of a nauseating sort of, really immoral and unethical, process. But they,
For sure.
They really intend to do this. So, yeah. So anyway, so I got out on conditional bond, and I was, I'm now trying to figure out how to do all this. Of course, I'm using medical marijuana for my ADHD and anxiety and depression. And I'm trying to now figure out how to shift that so I can use more CBD products, because I'm doing these random drug testings
Right.
and everything else. And I end up having a couple of failed drug tests. And so they now revoke my bond and they throw me into prison, basically.
Right.
So now I'm left in prison to try to defend myself. And it's impossible by the time you get there. But my attorney wouldn't file motions for me to suppress the evidence. He wouldn't challenge the plain smell doctrine. He wouldn't, he didn't inform me of my right to speedy trials. He didn't do a lot of things. And, hindsight's 2020. I know all this stuff now, but when you're in the middle of that, you don't know. And there's timelines and deadlines for all of those things. So if you don't know and you have to learn, and then your attorney won't file.
And it's not your job to learn.
Right.
Our attorneys are supposed to be working for us, but they're not. They're working in cahoots. It's like a big mob boss freaking thing. Like it drives me crazy the more and more you dig into stuff and what you thought our cops are supposed to be there to protect and serve us. Like we pay them as citizens to do this, and they're not. They're it's all a big money scam.
Yep. It's a big money scheme. And the attorneys are there, and so my attorney basically wanted to push me into a plea deal. And he said, well, we're going to get this plea deal. And so if you sign for the marijuana, then they're going to drop the gun charges. And I was like, I don't want to sign. I don't want to do this. You need to file a pretrial motion to suppress, because that he was using plain smell doctrine, and I had every right to smell like
that.
So I was like, you need to file the motion so we can have that hearing. And he absolutely refused to file. He refused to put me on the stand to testify to be able to testify to defend myself. Like I said, he refused to tell me about my speedy trial rights. he basically, every time I met with him, he just said, you need to sign this plea deal. You need to sign this plea deal. You need to sign this plea deal. So I waited. I would, they put me in like a max security facility. I was with violent offenders, attempted murderers who'd shot people, MS-13 gang members, people that were violent criminals.
Right.
And so I was, not only was I now having to try to defend my case and figure out what I was going to do with all that, I was also now having to worry about, defending my life and my safety. So,
Right.
like getting beat up or, whatever.
No,
So,
yeah.
so you have all that additional stress on you. And then my family is very stressed out because, there's a financial burden of me not being there and
Right.
helping to support them and all that. So all of it just compiles upon you at that point. And so you really have every incentive then to sign the plea deal.
Right.
I waited though. I waited until the plea deadline all the way to the end. I met with my attorney a couple more times. And during the last meeting, I talked to him about my Fourth Amendment, my Fifth Amendment, and my Eighth Amendment rights, and how Eighth Amendment is the right not to excessive bail. And my argument, and one of the things that we need to fix as a community as a whole, is this conditional bail is a problem.
Right.
I mean, they're putting people on probation before they've been to trial,
Right.
and that's not a presumption of innocence. And that's your Eighth Amendment right. You have a right not to have excessive bail.
Right.
But that's what they're doing. And to me, that bail thing right there is the first step in the whole thing kind of cascading and dominoing against people. So so that's something we've got to fix, and something people
Definitely
need to know more about. So that's one of my agenda items for criminal justice reform now is
for sure.
Getting conditional bail, thrown out or figured out so that it's not, it's not a restriction of liberty, because they're literally restricting your liberty and you haven't been proven guilty of a crime. So
Exactly.
how does that work, right?
And it's like a class thing. I say this all the time. It used to be a race thing, and there still is racist people out there. Don't get me wrong, but they want us to believe it's a race thing. It's really a class thing.
Absolutely.
It's if you're rich, you can pay your way to play. But if you are poor
Yep.
and you get stuck in this, you are going down. You ain't got no money to fight. You are going down. It's crazy.
Well, and that was one of the things with my attorney, right? Is I didn't have 10 grand to just write him a check right out of the gate. I had to pay him a little bit up front, and then I had to pay him a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And so, had I been able to just write him a check and then write him another check and write him another check, then I'm sure he would have filed all my motions.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Because these people like Britney Spears or all these celebrities that get out on bond, they're not being told they have to do all this stuff. Like, it's crazy.
So so
you have to get rid of every one of your businesses, but pay me, and then they want you to get like probation or parole and pay them, but yet you don't have it, you can't work. Like, what the heck? Like, how am I supposed to pay you these fees? Like,
that's what the judge had said. The judge said initially said I had 20 days to find somebody else to run my companies. And I was like, this is a new company. It's a new industry. Not everyone has done this. It's not like I'm hiring somebody to come in and fill my shift at McDonald's, or even to manage a car shop or something.
Right.
This is not something you can just go find somebody to replace them with. And beyond that, though, she said that I couldn't travel to Oklahoma. So it's like, well,
how can I get somebody there to help if I can't go train them?
Right. So it was really an impossible task to be able to do that. And so, just another way that they try to trap you into it.
And then another adult cat.
So the day before, as my plea deadline came up and came to the end, it was like November something. I met with my attorney a couple of times, from prison, obviously, like I'm in a prison, in my jumpers, and here I am, I'm presumed innocent, right? But I can't possess an ink pen, I can't have nail clippers. We're given, in some of the facilities, you're given one roll of toilet paper a week.
Ugh.
You like, or what, in Fannin County, they give you one roll of toilet paper and one tiny bar of soap a week, to be, for yourself.
And in the middle of Corona, by the way, how are you supposed to keep clean and disinfect and
in the middle of Corona? And then you're supposed to be separated from other criminals. If you're pretrial, you're supposed to be in a separate area, but you're not. You're kept with everybody in the same place. And so they break the rules over and over and over again, and then they wonder why people don't respect the police or don't.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
You guys break your own rules, then why should anybody else respect the rules that you want to enforce?
Exactly.
But anyway, so I met with my attorney the day before my plea deadline, and I said, look, my Fourth Amendment rights were violated, my Fifth Amendment rights were violated, and my Eighth Amendment rights were violated. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. You just need to sign this plea deal. And I said, so you're telling me that I have no constitutional rights? And his answer was yes. And it's like that in all 50 states. And so at that point, I was just sort of like throwing my hands up in the air. And, it was.
I'd like to see him get on Fox or CNN and say that.
Right.
See, nobody knows this stuff because, of course, the media is bought. The media is going to talk and say what the feds and the state want them to say. Like they all have the same thing they're supposed to say. So people that aren't digging in the computer, like computer geeks and us people digging around for the information themselves, they're only going to see the agenda that they want you to see. And I know it sounds conspiracy theorist, y'all, but I'm telling you, they say you're a conspiracy theorist to get you to think those people that are speaking the truth are crazy, because this is really how it's set up. Like it's all wrong. And people just assume, oh, well, they shouldn't have broke the law and they wouldn't be there. Like, I don't understand that. Like, we break the law every day. This could be you don't even know, you have, like, for instance, you said you were looking on your map, GPS, to get to where you're going. Like, you're not on your phone and he pulls you over because your phone light's lit, apparently. Every one of us do that every day.
Right.
Yeah. So every one of us are acceptable to be pulled over by this crap. But yet they have a full computer on their dash that they can get on and do whatever they want while they're driving down the road and endanger our lives. Like, it makes no sense.
No, it really, they're really a protected class of people. They can really do what they want to do. They really can trample all over our constitutional rights. And like I said, I really thought the Constitution was going to protect me, but I found out very quickly and that was the other thing. So I ended up signing my plea deal, which I didn't want to do, right. But I felt like I was coerced. I felt like well, you had
lost everything at this point. You had nothing left to fight with. Like, what else that's what their plan is.
Right. I lost everything. I didn't have anything else to fight with. I had done a lot of research in the legal library. I went to the legal library and I did what little they would let me into the legal library. Because they only give me like an hour a day to be able to get in there. So what little access I did, and even if you want access to the legal library, they're supposed to give you an hour a day in there, which they should give you as much time as you need in there. But you don't. So you're only given an hour a day. And if you want to get in there, you have to put in a written request. And sometimes it can take 2 days for that written request to come back to get you what you need. So again, once you're trapped in that system, you're literally trapped in that system and there's nothing you can do. So, I provided all of these case laws to my attorney. I said, well, there's this case law and there's this case law. And I literally have notes upon notes upon notes that I handed to my attorney saying, this is how we can fight this. This is how you can do this. Right. And he said, no, over and over again. No, just take the plea, that we're making the guns go away. And I'm like, yeah, but you're making me a federal felon Now I'm going to
Right.
be a federal felon for the rest of my life. I can't vote, until, well, I can now you can get your voting rights back. But I
Right.
can't vote. I can't possess a gun.
No
There's certain,
government help.
yeah, there's no government help. There's certain countries that I can't travel to. I'm like, you're literally giving me a life sentence
Yeah.
for
A few
possessing,
grams of pot, a
yeah,
few
for,
ounces of pot. Yeah.
yeah. So, and here's the crazy thing about it too, is I had asked my attorney over and over again to make sure that they had actually tested the product to
Exactly.
verify that it was marijuana. Come to find out, after I signed my plea deal, after I've got my previous sentencing investigation, after they've done all these other steps,
Never.
they never tested it. They never even proved that what I had on my person was marijuana. So when they wrote my pre-sentencing investigation and they wrote it all up, they ended up sentencing me for 51 grams of marijuana. That was the total amount that they put upon me. And that 51 grams of marijuana is what made me a federal felon.
Wow.
So,
I'm
yeah.
telling you, dude, it's all messed up. And we've got a lot of work to do to make some changes. Like, the whole, I see no way to do it. Like, okay, so I started learning this stuff when fighting for cannabis. Like, we go to the Capitol and we testify and we vote on. I, I started learning how none of that really matters. Like, you can sit there and pour your heart out to people and stuff, and whoever is paying to keep what bill going or lobbying or giving so and so the best back rub or whatever gets what to go where. Like, it's all like the people aren't making the laws, and then
Right.
these stupid laws get thrown in, like, well, if you have a gun and cannabis in the same vicinity, that you are now a drug lord and you are a terrorist to our community, and they can do whatever. Like, lots of people have guns, and you're telling me I can't put my money in a bank, but yet I can't have a gun to protect myself. In the state of Texas, by the way, where they've made it to where you don't have to have a license to even have a gun now, but yet don't have cannabis with that, because federal time you will get.
Well, and here's the way. So the way that the prosecutors apply the law, if you take cannabis out of it, and this is where it gets into just a really sort of, it's the way that they're doing the law is so wrong and so bad, because let's say that you do need Xanax or you do need another prescription drug like
Yes.
that. And let's say that you're prescribed 10 milligrams of Xanax a day. Well, if you're prescribed 10 milligrams of Xanax and you carry a weapon with you, then you take 20 milligrams a day instead of 10, or 15 milligrams a day instead of 10. Well, now you're literally an unlawful drug user. And if you're an unlawful drug user, then now you can't possess a weapon.
Right.
Or let's go beyond that. Let's say that you have a hydrocodone prescription that you had because you had back surgery or something like
Right.
that. Let's say that prescription, the effective date of that prescription ran out, and you still have some more of that hydrocodone in your car. And so now you've got a prescription bottle with hydrocodone in your car that's got your name on it, that was given to you, but the prescription's run out. The date is expired.
Right.
And you have a weapon on you.
Yep.
Well, now all of a sudden, because you're an unlawful drug user, because you have drugs in your car that are there unlawfully because they're not literally prescribed within the window of prescription. So now you have no second amendment rights anymore. Right. Because what? And so it's the way that they're twisting the law, the way that they're manipulating the law to kind of fit in their little window it's a travesty. And people just need to be aware, because there's a lot of work to be done.
For sure. For sure. Definitely. Man, Justin, I so can't wait to work with you on all this, if possible. I want to help you in any way I can. We're totally in agreement on what things need to be changed and what we need to do. So if I can help and use my listeners or THSI or whatever I've got in my pocket to help you get the word out on any future stuff you want to work on, let me know. And I know I set you up with Michael, that you and him oh my God, y'all could get some shit done. Like y'all are the same too, because he's like Republican and like, and both y'all believe the same. Like we
Right.
need cannabis, you know what I mean? And I can see, some good things coming out of that. What is, what is your, uh, what would I say? What is it that you've taken out of all of this that's going on and happened to you?
I mean, I've just taken it, like you said, it is a class thing, but ultimately, without sounding too conspiracy theory, I
Right,
really do feel like that anyone who is a vocal voice for change, anyone who's trying to draw light to the corrupted system, anyone, because I was a vocal person out there trying to
right,
fight this stuff, and not just for cannabis, for criminal justice reform, for civil asset forfeiture, you know, for raw milk. I mean, for
right,
like little things like that. I was a Ron Paul delegate in 2012. So, I'm an advocate for liberty.
right.
And anyone who's an advocate for liberty, who is, sort of working to maintain our liberties, to go against the system, to go against, the tyranny that ensues all around us now.
Hmm.
Everybody says, "Oh, America's the greatest country in the world. Oh, we have this, we have that," and it's
It's the
like,
greatest hoax in the world. Like
and
greatest hoax.
I love the Constitution. I love the idea of the republic. But what so many people don't
They're
realize,
not
is
keeping it.
yeah, we've lost it. The
Yeah.
Constitution isn't there anymore, and we really are in a modern time of either socialism or, we have socialism on the Democrat side, and we have fascism on the Republican side, and that anyone who's in the middle, that's saying, "Wait a minute, we just want freedom. We want the government to leave
All
us
right.
alone." Those people are being silenced, and I really believe that the criminal justice system is one of the biggest ways that two things, okay, two takeaways from all of this. Number one, they're using it to silence political opposition. And number two, they're using it to take away our guns. Because
Right.
ultimately, what they do is they create felony offenses for all of these people. And once you have a felony
Can't
offense,
have
you
a
can
gun.
no longer possess a gun.
Right.
Not only can you no longer possess a gun, you can't possess a bullet. If I get if I get pulled over and I have a bullet in my car, then I'm looking at 5 years prison time.
Oh my God. And
It's
you can't be
absolutely,
around other felons. So who can you be around with these days? Because everybody's a felon now. Like,
well, and that's the thing too, is that our criminal justice system really needs to be about rehabilitation, and it's
it's
not.
supposed to be.
It's really about putting people back into the system. And the private, we didn't even talk about the private prisons. Like
Exactly.
the place that they kept me, the whole time they kept me there, they kept me in a private prison facility, and the government paid them, I think it was like $168 a day for them to house me.
Let's
So
get you back on to talk about just the private prison stuff because you're exactly right. And they're supposed to be rehabilitating you. And that's what people think. They think, oh, you're getting all your medical care, you're being treated, you're a criminal. So, well, the thing is, you're putting me in there, somebody who's never broke the law on purpose. Like I'm sure I've broken a law that I didn't know, but all I've ever done is smoke a little weed, and you just put me in here with murders and rapists, and now I have to become a criminal in
yeah,
here because if I don't, I die or I get raped or I get beat or something. Like you have to have a criminal mentality in there to survive.
in the
And
facility I was in, there were two guys that got stabbed, and one of them died. So like it's not a joke. Like you literally have to worry about your life every day, and you can't look at somebody wrong. You can't.
you
You
can't
know, you
talk to a Mexican person if you're white.
yeah,
Like,
you gotta be really careful if you mix race. You can't bunk with the wrong race. You've got and they, of course they keep it. They just like out here, they keep us divided so that they can keep control. In there, they keep
exactly.
divided so that they can keep control. But the private prison system and them making so much money on incarcerating people. Again, what I was saying though is the United States, is supposed to be the freest country in the world, and yet we have the highest rates of incarceration. than any of the countries, and a lot of them combined, like
Right.
India and China combined. You think, okay, well, they got, 4 times as many people as us or something like that, and yet we've got more people incarcerated than them.
Yeah.
So how
Criminals make them money as long as they can keep the criminals out there doing what they're making money. Like,
right.
and then you come out of prison with PTSD and everything else because you just got thrown into that war zone. And I say a war zone because that's what it is. It's a war zone. And
Yeah.
so they're not rehabilitating anyone. They're making them worse, giving them PTSD and then sending them back out on the street and saying, fend for yourself. You get no government help, by the way. You get no anything from us. Figure it out on your own.
Yeah. Well, I was one of the lucky ones. I only had to do like 4.5 months
Right.
in. So, but even in the 4.5 months that I was there, I can completely understand how you can become institutionalized. And how
Right.
you can become to like, okay, this is life. This is how it is. And even getting out now, like one of the weirdest parts getting out was like, okay, I've got to feed myself every day.
Right.
Like I have to cook for myself and I have to feed myself every day. And that seems like a small thing, but it's just you get into this pattern. So you've got guys that have been there 5, 10, 15 years, and they come out and you expect them just to overnight go get a job and go do this and go do
Yeah.
that. They don't even know what a smartphone is.
Exactly. Like everything's done on that computer now. It's like if they weren't raised in it and didn't grow up with it, they have we learned it a little bit at a time. Like they got to learn it all at once. It's impossible. Like task to ask them to do by themselves.
Yeah, it's really, and it really says a lot to the guys that are able to do it or even able to halfway do it,
Right.
But people just, I hope people have more compassion for folks that have been in, that come
For
out
sure.
and say, look, it's really difficult. And once you've done it, and the other thing I'm really fighting for is the restoration of felony rights. Like I do not believe that once you've done your time and once you've paid your debt to society, that you should not have rights as just like everyone else.
Exactly. You've done your time. Why am I being punished still? Like, let them go.
And I say it like this: if these truly are inalienable God-given rights, and the government doesn't give us our rights, then the government shouldn't be able to take them away. And that's exactly what they're doing, is they're creating a whole class of people called felony offenders that they're taking away their rights. And it's not wrong. I mean, it's not right. It's wrong. It's immoral. It's unjust. And people are like, well, what about these criminals that are, violent and all these other things? And I'm like, well, look, if these people are the kind of people that can't possess a firearm now, then maybe they don't need to be released and put back on the street.
Right.
And maybe if we weren't housing, nonviolent drug users and all these other people for, nonviolent victimless,
we'd have room for the ones that belong there.
So you'd be able to deal with violent people who do these things. So, it's wrong, it's immoral, it's unethical, it's got to change. And I'm not sure what it's going to take to make the change, but it's going to take a lot of us, and it's going to take a lot of voices stepping up and saying, no, we this has to change, and it's got to change now. So.
Yeah, me and my husband have this debate regularly. He's like, well, we need government. And I'm like, well, no, we don't. Like, live and let live. Like, if somebody tries to rob me, you got a gun, shoot them. They won't rob you anymore. Like that will keep people from wanting to rob you if they know they're going to get shot. Like, I understand the whole government thing, but they're not doing their job right now.
No.
And it's set up to be corrupted. And so even if you replace every government official that we have with somebody else that's not corrupted, eventually they're going to end up corrupted because they are in a place of power that people go and buy those people off. Or they are with buddies that say, if you tell on, back the blue, don't tell on your buddy. Like that makes that person a bad person because they're not turning that person in. But
I will say about the police and the back the blue, like that's part of the problem.
Yes, they are separating us.
People want to blindly say back the blue. The problem is that police officers and those that are good police, I mean,
Right.
I do believe that there are good
Oh,
police,
yeah.
but those that are good police are not, they're staying silent and they're not calling out the people
Exactly.
that are bad actors. And if the good police are not calling out bad actors, then they're now complicit in this whole
Yeah.
system.
They're now bad police. That's what
Right.
I say, because if you aren't opening your mouth, even if you're a good cop, never did anything wrong, you see Joe Blow over here grab somebody's head and slam it against the concrete for no reason, say something.
Right. Well, and
If
it's even
not,
not,
you
it's
are
not,
just as bad as them.
and it's not even just slamming your head against the police.
Right. Oh, no, it's much more.
For me, like they do what they call creative reporting, and what they do is when they type up their little report about the stop, they write it in such a way that it, like, if you read my report from the police officer that stopped me or from the highway patrolman that stopped me, you would think that had this massive like manufacturing and distribution facility in
Oh, I
Oklahoma,
bet.
like feeding all of Texas,
Right.
I'm looking at this going, man, if this is what I was actually doing, don't you think I would actually have money and finances to be able to pay my attorney and to be able to do all this stuff? Like, no, like I'm
That's
just a
all
small
done on purpose. That way, when the average citizen goes and looks at that, when you say there's a misjustice, they start reading this and being like, oh, well, this person belongs there. And that's the end of it. They don't even look into anything else after that.
Yep, yep, and that's how they do. And so, yeah, we've got a lot of work to do, and we've
For
got a lot
sure.
to change. So, I look forward to working with you as well. And anybody else that's needing to volunteer or speak up or want to do something, even if it's just a couple hours a week, like pick something you're passionate about and get involved. This cycle is the election cycle, so people need to be
Yep.
involved in creating party platforms and creating party rules. And especially in Texas, because in Texas the primaries and the political season,
Right.
like it's happening now before the general election, is so
Yep.
important, and it's so influential. Because in Texas, that's what they do. They're like, oh well, we can keep this part to the elites because
Yeah.
nobody really gets involved with this. And then by the time you get to the general election, they've already decided. So it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter which one.
Exactly. Doesn't matter what you say. No,
So
they figured it out already.
yeah, yeah. So we got to get people involved. We got to get people, woke, if they want to say that word or whatever. But there's people do need to wake up, and people need to understand that we've come a long way. We're 21 years after the Patriot Act,
Right.
and that hit me just when that hit me probably a few months ago when I was inside. Is it's now 21 years after the Patriot Act, and this is the society we live in. And so we really need to, we need to wake up, we need to speak up, we need to start putting pressure on the officials and the law enforcement and everyone else to be able to start to fix this. Because
For sure. The people have to rise up and have to put a stop to it and have to say, no, I'm done. And you don't have to do it forcefully, like stop doing anything, stop going to work, stop. And yes, but you know what? You're going to lose everything anyway. It's all the government's anyway. So you're never going to own your house. You're never going to own your car. Like everything is owned. Like you're going to have to pay taxes out the ass for the rest of your life. They're always going to keep going up. So we either fix it now or you're leaving this to your kids to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And stop doing it. Stop paying your taxes. Stop going to work. Stop all of it. And then what are they going to do? You're not feeding their machine anymore.
No. Amen.
And we all proved we can do it. We lived through Corona, right? Yeah, you got government checks or whatever, but I'm sure there's some way we could get this done and everybody survive and be fed, like, and live just fine. Well, thank you so much, Justin. Was there anything else that you wanted to let anybody know, or are we about done?
Not right now. I think we've covered a lot of ground already. So
For sure. And definitely would like to get you back on about the prison system, because that's a whole nother story right there, the private prisons.
Yes, ma'am.
But you have a wonderful night, Justin. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on.
Bye-bye, everyone.